Hello, welcome to the New Stack Makers, a podcast where we talk about at-scale application development, deployment, and management. We'd like to thank Capital One, our sponsor for the podcast from OSCON in Austin, Texas. Learn more about Capital One's developer program at developer.capitalone.com. Hey, it's Alex Williams of the New Stack here live from OSCON in Austin, Texas. And we're going to be talking about a topic that is of real interest in the community now, a real interest in the New Stack. And it's a lot about diversity, a lot about inclusion, but I think from my perspective and what I'm hearing from just kind of the background on this conversation here is we really want to talk about kind of the inspiration. And, what is it that really motivates people to to continue to drive forward in their own careers. And so join with me are Margaret Mayer of Capital One. Hey, Margaret.
Hi, good morning.
Hi. And Ashley McNamara of Pivotal. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome.
So tell me about that. I mean, I'm very curious about this inspirational perspective, right? And it might help just tell me a little bit about yourself and your own career and your observations.
Sure. So I have an engineering degree, and interestingly, the inspiration comes back to my mom. My mom, in the late 50s, early 60s, actually started college in engineering. Now, at that point, she was really isolated and really alone. It would have been super easy for her, when I showed an interest in math and science and was trying to figure out what to do for college, to discourage me. Right? Because she had no role models and she experienced a lot of isolation. But instead, she encouraged me and I continued forward. And I think we need more stories in those pivotal years around inspiring role models, because every field is hard, right? I mean, tech is no harder than medicine, law. But I think the problem is we talk too much about the obstacles and the personal challenges at certain companies versus the inspiring stories around why did we go into tech, which for me is being able to change lives and touch people with technology and really get to see them use the technology in ways that I wasn't even expecting, but just kind of get them, just being able to change people's lives with technology.
So what are your thoughts, Ashley? Well, how do you approach this subject?
So I am not new to tech. My dad was a network engineer for NATO, and so I've been building computers since I was a kid. But my parents never encouraged an engineering path. I was really good at art as well, and so if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see a mix of art and tech. And my parents were like, "You're really great at drawing." And nobody in my family said, "You're really great at, math." It's because girls are, hey, you play with dolls. You don't play with Legos or, you don't build things. That's a boy's thing. When you think about an engineer, everyone, probably even women sitting at this table, when you think of an engineer, you think of Mark Zuckerberg, and why wouldn't you? And so I transitioned from an art-heavy background to a tech-heavy background as now. Even I ran a photography business for about 10 years, and during that I was building websites. It's because my passion was always tech. And I have a 19-year-old daughter as well, and she is also pursuing tech, and so my inspiration is for her. Even now at 19, her advisor is telling her that maybe engineering is not for her and she might need to stick with a business degree.
Why is that counselor saying that? Have you been able to understand this?
Her counselor said, "Sweetie, you might just want to stick to business. Engineering's not for you." And that advisor was a woman.
What does that code to you say? What is the code in that?
For me, it is we are not doing a good enough job. We say women tech, but we are not doing enough to teach our children. I was telling Oh my gosh, I forgot your name.
Margaret.
already. Margaret. I almost said Melissa. I'm like, this is gonna be embarrassing. I was telling Margaret earlier, speak about injustice for us. Great, that's good and great.
Right.
But what about our children?
Yeah.
The next generation, what are we doing to teach them that no matter who you are, no matter what your background is, no matter what your gender is, that engineering is for everyone. It's not just for women. So when I started my transition, I didn't know if I would make it. I didn't know if I would succeed or fail, but it was important to me to try for my daughter, to show her that anyone can do it, no matter what your age, no matter what your background, anyone can do it.
So, Margaret, so you have children?
Yes, I do. Actually, I have a 16 and 19-year-old.
Okay, boys, girls.
Both girls. One's a sophomore in college, and she's in chemical engineering.
Okay, and what is it that what are the questions she's asking? What are the stories she's sharing, and how do you be a mentor?
Right. So for me, for both my daughters, my other daughter is interested in physical therapy. So both, science fields. I really try to tell them that they can be good at anything they want to do, and that they are great at what they do and what they've chosen. If they put their heart into it, they can succeed. The interesting thing is one of my younger daughter would come home at times and say, I'm not good at math and science, and I tell her your grades say otherwise. You can tell me that you don't want to choose it as a career, and that's fine, but don't tell me you're not good at it because you're not failing. And I'm not sure where that comes from. I tend to think that there is in media that somehow we don't have enough role models of women, current women. We've been doing a great job, like with the Hidden Figures movie and different things, of showing, that women have been successful. But today, right, our media our mainstream media doesn't celebrate these great women in technology.
That title says so much. Hidden Figures.
Yeah. Yes, it does. It does exactly.
And figures is a term associated with women, right?
Right.
And hidden, because putting them out in the open as true leaders
Right.
is not done.
Right. Exactly. And of course, for the African American population, right, at the time when those women at NASA were there, they faced discrimination. They face incredible hurdles today. I mean, then rather. And some of those hurdles, while not as overt, still exist in certain companies, right? The whole notion of unconscious bias, implicit bias. At the same time, there are companies that are really taking steps to combat that. And for women who might be at a company that isn't really thinking about this, and if they're facing obstacles, my message is there are companies out there that don't support that. Don't leave tech. Just leave that company and come and find a company that actually embraces diversity and is working hard to make sure that everybody's aware of their own biases. Everybody has a bias, right? So, I always tell people, like, if you only go to a woman doctor, that's a bias. It's not a bad bias. It's only a bad bias if you have a serious health condition and the best doctor happens to be male and you refuse to see them. That's horrible. But, everyone has biases. It's understanding which ones are detrimental.
So these unconscious biases, and it speaks then to the institutions that have those inherent biases in them. And so what I'm hearing you both say is that that there's a need for more people to be inspirations for who've overcome those different biases, and they do that in a variety of ways, right? They do that by maybe leaving a company because they're not getting there, because they're finding that there are these barriers,
right.
Or they move to different departments. What have been your own experiences then in helping overcome these institutional biases and this unconscious, this unconscious, what do you call it? Unconscious, biases in themselves.
Yeah, Ashley, you want to?
Yeah, it's unconscious. No matter where you go, you're going to have these obstacles as a woman. As a woman, if you were to give a hiring committee two exact resumes, one with a male name, one with a female name, they will always say that the male is more qualified. It's the same resume. They have the same qualifications. The woman will have to be 2.5 times more qualified to be seen as equal. That person might consider themselves a male feminist. Like,
Yeah.
it's unconscious. You're going to deal with this. And so I try to look at it as, like, maybe he doesn't mean to not listen, like when I say something in a meeting and a male repeats it and they're like, oh, Greg, that's a great idea. And I'm like, I just said that 5 seconds ago. Instead of having that attitude and then going straight to Twitter and saying, so-and-so company is sexist and Greg is an asshole because he took my idea. Well, maybe Greg didn't mean to take your idea. Take a step back and say, okay, let's give Greg a chance. Let's talk to Greg on the side and make Greg aware of what he did in a non-attacking way. I think that we automatically, I think that the need for attention in the media and on Twitter outweighs the message at this point. If we have a little bit more compassion for people and a little bit less need for attention and the need to create a hashtag, I think that we're going to move the needle forward a lot more.
So is it helping people understand how to listen?
Yes.
In many ways?
Right, and it's being open. And it goes both ways, right? And because just because I'm a woman in tech doesn't all of a sudden give me I'm right and everybody's wrong, right?
Right.
And that it needs to be a balanced conversation. And Ashley has a tremendous point, which is, well, let's understand what happened in that meeting. In order to do that, though, that company needs to foster an open, collaborative culture.
Yes.
And that, quite frankly, it's not a diversity problem. That's a cultural problem. And if you actually foster that open, collaborative culture, I believe these things around actually underrepresented populations and different issues actually start to go away. Because I bet if you have a company that doesn't have that type of culture, you could probably get a group of men together and they would complain about the same thing. It just doesn't get the attention.
So these open collaborative cultures are still, in your view, are few and far between? Where would you say things? I mean, there's more discussion about it more than
Right.
than I recalled in the tech sector.
I think that there's a lot more discussion than action.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the action and how do you, like, because it's easy, because I don't mean to be, as a reporter, I think open collaborative culture, yeah, that's great, right?
Yes.
Right.
And we hear a lot about these things, about open collaborative culture and everything else, but there is so much discussion about it, and we do this, right? I'm not saying, that we don't, but how do you go beyond that? Like, so it becomes actually something that is actually becomes, that has an anchor and becomes something that actually is meaningful and widespread.
I think a lot of that responsibility is going to lay on people like you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what are we talking about? Are we talking about the latest hashtag, or are we talking about the companies that maybe are not the size of Google but have really great culture and are really trying hard? Let's not forget about those people.
Why'd you go to Pivotal?
I went to Pivotal because I love that team. I get to work with people like Bridget. I get to work for somebody like Andrew Clay Schaefer. That was really, really important to me. It wasn't necessarily about the company per se as much as it was about the people and the teams that I would get to work with.
How is it?
It's amazing. It is awesome. Everyone has been way cooler than I could have imagined. I was a little bit nervous at first. It's like, oh man, I'm an open source gal, and like this is very like enterprisey, and I'm doing Golang stuff. Nobody even knows that Pivotal uses Golang. Like, what? This is going to be great. But it's been actually great.
The technical challenges. Is the job technically challenging for you in terms of like
Yes.
the job in terms of like the complexity of it and the kind of the growth?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm 4-ish weeks in right now, and when somebody, what team do you work for? Oh crap, we have a lot. We have a lot of products. We have a lot of products. It's a hard question to answer, but I do a lot of the Go advocacy, and so most of that is on the Cloud Foundry side. So a lot of Cloud Foundry is transitioning to Go. So almost all of their code is now Go code, which is something I didn't know until I came in. And there's a lot of projects written in Go that I still need to like spin up on. So it's super technically challenging.
Interesting. So Margaret, for yourself,
Yeah,
you know,
I'm quite the opposite because I've been with Capital One for 19 years.
okay, yeah,
I've stayed because of the people, and I've stayed because of that culture that I mentioned.
Huh.
I really believe that Capital One lives its values. Now, I'll be honest, right? A collaborative culture in some ways is tougher. There are a lot of conversations that happen because you need to align people and you need to build buy-in. But when you can have that discussion based on technical criteria, and it's open and it's honest, and there are not hidden agendas, right? You know, everyone feels bought in when the decision's made. Even if you were advocating for a different way, you at least understand what was I missing or why was that decision made. I've always had challenging work at the company, and right now I lead all of enterprise messaging for the company, push, email, SMS, as well as we launched Eno, our AI-powered chatbot,
that's very
at South by. So so I probably have the most fun, cool job right now.
that's neat. That's neat. That's neat. So where are your careers going? What are some of the things you guys want to do? Because we're talking about that inspiration, I want to hear it.
Yeah.
What are your dreams and aspirations?
I have no idea what I want to be when I grow up. I look at people like, I admire Kelsey Hightower a lot. And like, oh, maybe I want to be Kelsey when I grow up. Maybe I want to be Andrew. I have no idea what I want to be when I grow up. I'm sort of just winging it at this point. Like, let's just see where it goes.
Happy enjoying yourself.
Yes.
And what are some of the technical challenges you'd like to see in your career then? What are some of would you like to be in management?
Oh, no. No,
No.
I have no desire.
Interesting.
I was in management at Rackspace, and I found myself not doing the cool things, but like, hey, everyone else gets to do the cool things. I want to do the cool things. So it's a selfish thing on my part where I'm like, I want to be doing the cool tech stuff. I'm great with directing it as well, but I want to be in the weeds.
So then how do you then, be that motivator for other people like who've come maybe from an art background and, who are just looking at kind of their careers?
I do a lot of speaking about this, transitioning careers, because I know I'm not the only one in this position. So I do a lot of mentoring, I do a lot of resource building, I do a lot of pairing junior developers with senior developers, I do a lot of podcasting. So I'm definitely spreading awareness through social channels.
That's part of your mission
Yes.
then, right?
Absolutely.
So what's your mission? What are your dreams? What are your aspirations?
So, I think for me, where I just really want to figure out where this world around natural language and AI is really going to take us, and how it is going to transform all of our industries. So I'm excited to stay part of that. I also, like Ashley, have a passion for education. And so I'm involved locally in Richmond in codeva.org on their board, and really figuring out how we bring computer science education and make it mainstream. Because for me, part of demystifying the difficulty of computer science is making it part of the common curriculum, just like biology or physics, right? And so if we can get that really into nationwide as part of the core curriculum, I think we're going to find that we start educating all of our next generation after that for the future economy, and ideally also we start to address some of this diversity challenge.
So what do you say to the other women out there who may have a career counselor who discourages them from being an engineer, or maybe the manager who doesn't listen to what they say? And what is your thought? What do you share with your daughter that you would also kind of think about thematically sharing with other people?
So for my daughter, she's very much like me, and I think that's it's good and bad. The great part of that is that I enjoy when somebody says you can't do something. Tell me again I can't do it, because I'm going to prove you wrong. So be strong. Do not take no for an answer. There's somebody out there to support you.
What if you have a strong personality?
Yes.
And there are a lot of people who, both men and women, who are pretty shy, right? Or they don't want to speak up, and they're just happy to be coding or writing their story or whatever it is. How do you help inspire them?
It's going to be difficult. It's difficult, especially if you're a woman and you're shy and you don't want to speak up, and conflict is hard. This industry, it preys on the weak.
Yeah.
There's no real good answer for that. I wish I had a great answer for that.
You must encounter lots of women inside your organization who...
I have a different perspective. Introversion, you find introverts in men and women.
Yeah.
I think, for women who... I think there's a difference between being introverted and not being confident.
Yes.
You can be an extrovert but not be confident in what you're talking about. But you might actually speak up more because you're extroverted. So if there's a woman who comes to me who is not confident, first I try to figure out, is this introversion, just doesn't want to speak up, or is this a confidence challenge, right? And then in terms of the confidence part, if she feels like she doesn't have all the facts and she needs to, before she speaks up, she needs to have every fact listed, we talk about that. And I say, look, instead of not saying anything during the meeting and then sending a bunch of emails or pushing your point or being frustrated, raise your voice, raise up and say, hi, I think actually there's some data I need to go get. I'm not confident completely on the data, but if the data is correct, I think we need to go a different direction, and see if that helps at least create an opening for her to then go back and go do the research. Now, if she actually has all the data, she or he, if this is an introverted problem and not a confidence problem, then it's just really understanding why don't they feel the need to contribute to the conversation. Mm-hmm. Or do they just prefer to work it one-on-one after the meeting? Mm-hmm. Versus a group setting. Mm-hmm. That can be just as effective. But sometimes people will get feedback, oh, you never say anything, you can't influence, right? But if people can speak up strategically, that's the key thing. And but you have to be able to separate introversion from confidence and then coach it differently.
Right.
I actually like that, though. Maybe it's an opportunity to give people different outlets to share.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a multidimensional aspect to this.
Yeah.
So, just in conclusion, maybe we can just talk about, in finale, kind of, what are those things that you will be doing, going forward that you really look forward to? That, and how would you like? I guess another question too, just for my own feedback, selfishly, how should we approach this story? How should we approach this topic? What's the arsenal that we can provide, right, in kind of talking about this and discussing these issues? I'm curious.
I feel like you guys are between a rock and a hard place here. You have to discuss the Susan Fowlers. You have to have those discussions. But I would love to see more talk of like successful women. So people who are already established, people who are already successful. Let's not talk about just the struggles. Let's elevate women so that we're not just talking about Grace Hopper.
Right. Yeah. For me, my message is out for those companies who are contemplating how do they address if they feel like they have a diversity problem. First, they have to decide that they do, and if they do and they want to do something about it, is to start the conversation. Start the conversation with your senior women and find out what they're thinking. Start the conversation with the junior women as well. They're going to be different perspectives. And then, just be open to hearing what's going really well, because, I've been with my company for 19 years. I wouldn't stay if things weren't going really well and if I don't believe that they address diversity. But it's a tough thing. That's where I would start with other companies, and for me, just again, where I'm spending my personal passion is around how do I make sure that there are role models and that people can walk away saying, I belong to this industry, I'm good at this industry, and I love what I do.
Yeah, I think one of the things we're also trying to focus on is just highlighting people and the work that they do.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Focusing on
Yes.
the work that they do. And, and those discussions about diversity and inclusion are important, but just as important, I think even more important, are like talking to people about, what is the technical challenges they're facing? What's the work that they do? Mm-hmm. Like, how do they, how are they approaching their work in terms of developing at scale, distributed applications? Those are the kinds of topics that we know well, but
right.
It's
Yeah.
the softer kind of topic matters that I think pose a challenge. So thank you very much, and really appreciate both your perspectives and and the inspiration that you are providing to others. And good luck in your own careers. And thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank Capital One, our sponsor for the podcast from OSCON in Austin, Texas. Learn more about Capital One's developer program at developer.capitalone.com. Listen to more episodes of the New Stack Bakers at thenewstack.io/podcasts. Please rate and review us on iTunes, like us on YouTube, and follow us on Soundcloud. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.